America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I don't know anybody here can do a prayer. Does anybody do a prayer?
Mike?
Okay. You strike me down with lightning.
I'll go.
Oh, thank you very much.
All right. Dear Lord, thank you for delivering us all here today. Some of us in better health than others, and some of us needing your guiding hands for a little more health and rehabilitation. Thank you for everything that we do have, and thank you for delivering us from the kind of evil that we do see out there today and see in the news, and continue to hold us in your safety and loving grace. By we pray. Amen. Been a while. Thank you. Prayer. So I do need your assistance on. I don't know what planes.
By the way, this is where you shut off the air conditioner. So when we all leave, if I'm not here, when we all leave, shut that off, please.
Okay.
My assistant for.
I have no idea what's going on with the aircraft right now.
Okay. Cap 887 was replaced by Cap 743 Charlie Papa just yesterday. They were afraid to put it in the hangar, and I don't know why. If a pilot can fly an airplane, he should be able to put an airplane in a hangar. So I was kind of bothered about that.
So where is it?
Well, we let them leave it up at the port's level. That's a go-to thing for people that don't know where to park.
Okay.
They can park it transient, but we'd have to move it that night to ports. I had 3 or 4 spots up there that the airport has assigned us to use when we have transitional aircraft. Andre and Kent Ferris.
Trent Ferris?
Trent Ferris, I'm sorry. It's been a long day. Trent Ferris, they took the aircraft today at about 10 o'clock. They met here at 10 o'clock. They took the aircraft to a WADS mission in the Fresno area. I tracked them all the way to the Fresno airport. They just landed about an hour ago at Fresno airport, so maybe an hour and a half ago. I understand they're going to do a night WADS mission, which is new. I've never seen that before.
Yeah.
And then they'll be back sometime tonight. So
Long night.
So when they get back, they're going to put the aircraft back in the hangar. Because Trent knows how to do that. So he's going to put it back. Now, just so you know, Cap 887, which is the one they took, usually stays and lives in Palm Springs. But during the summer months, Palm Springs is too hot to get any performance out of an aircraft. So what they do is all the pilots actually leave town and they're snowbirds, they go somewhere else. So the aircraft gets reallocated during the summer. It's like 1 or 2 or 3 months. Because it can get like 116 to 120 out there or better. So there's no performance on the little aircraft. So they brought it here for us to use while our aircraft is in the shop. Our aircraft 437, Charlie Papa, which is a turbo 206, is still waiting for an engine that's overhauled. The way I understand it is there's a shortage for cylinders. They've got all the other parts, but the cylinders are back ordered or non-existent. So they're waiting for cylinders. You know, everything in the COVID time got messed up for deliveries and manufacturing and all kinds of things. So there's a lot of things that are behind, and our cylinders are one of those things. Which, by the way, there's another aircraft, CAP aircraft, that's waiting for cylinders as well. So maybe something else. So 887 went to Fullerton because there's a lot more pilots at Fullerton, and they're flying almost every day. 887 doesn't have enough hours. We're supposed to put 200 hours on each aircraft every year as part of our mandate. So anyway, so it went to Fullerton because they're flying every day there. Their aircraft came here because it's got too many hours on it, so we don't have very many pilots to fly, so that's the reason for the swap. They will be swapped back eventually into their wherever they, 887 will go back to Palm Springs, 743 will go back to Fullerton. We'll get 437 back in the hangar someday. Everything will be normal again for a while. So that's the gist of it. Now 743 and 887 are identical aircraft. They're only a few serial numbers apart. So they're both G1000 with a Cap 140 autopilot, just so you know. 437, which is our 206. I know it's hard to keep up with the numbers because they're all similar. But it's a turbo 206, and it has a G1000 with a GFC 700 autopilot. It's integrated, which is a little bit newer of an aircraft. Some of the newer aircrafts that they have are NXI aircraft. It's a G1000 NXI, which is the newest technology. The way I understand it is I think you can land itself, right? You have a problem, you can push it up.
NXI? Not necessarily. I think you need auto land along with
Auto
it.
land, I think, but I don't know.
But there's a number of like little
I've never
features.
really done any training with NXI.
There's a lot of little features that just make it better than the
One of
original.
the greatest features about the NXI is you can do flight planning in your core flight and transfer it by Bluetooth into the G1000 environment, which is really neat. So, no more pushing buttons and that kind of stuff. So.
We have quite a few people online now. We have Ken Tharp, we have Rodney Delgado,
Oh, great.
and we have Scott Dringman.
Scott is a visitor.
Could be. And then we have Tim Peterson.
Great. Thank you very much, guys, for being online. I'll mark you down here as here.
And then
And,
Scott was here last week. Just so you know.
is Scott on there now?
Yeah.
Scott who?
Scott Dringman. Dringman.
D-R-I-N-G. What?
Man.
Okay.
Still new.
Still doing great. Well, somebody called me today, and I don't know who it was, but they asked if being online was going to count as a meeting, and I said yes. So, because he lives far away and he couldn't make it to the meeting. So.
Good.
Absolutely. So if you can be online and you can tell us that you're online, that will count that.
Yep, it was him. He just said that was him.
Good.
Yep.
Welcome. So, Christopher.
Yeah.
Is that enough information?
Yes. Update for the squadron. One thing I wanted to bring up before we get started and before I forget is awards time. So those of you who've been around for a while know about awards, but for everyone new, this is a volunteer organization. So how do we kind of get paid? Well, we don't. But what we do get is recognition for the things that we do. Any member of CAP can award any other member of CAP. Now,
Pearson and Mario are on there too. I'm sorry.
oh, no problem. So, and if you see something, and I know for the new people, it's going to be difficult because you don't know all the awards out there. But we do have some guidelines about what awards you can award or suggest for awarding, and also the format by which they are awarded. So there's some specific guidelines to, hey, I recommend so-and-so for this, and how we write that up. And if it's cool enough, it goes up to the group, it goes up to wing, it goes up to national if it's that much of an award. So something to think about. You see somebody do something, and if you don't know, you can come to me or come to Andre or Mike, and any one of us can kind of help out with, hey, I saw somebody do something really cool, or they really helped out. Is there an award for that? Because that's literally what it is. It's a big deal, and it's not hard to do. So I don't know, anything you want to add to that? It's a big deal, but it's a lot of us awards.
Oh, yeah, awards.
It's getting to be that time where we want some submissions.
You can actually give anybody an award for anything, and you could fill out the application and see if they can get the award. So basically, the awards all go in a bundle. They go from Squadron. We have guys in the squadron, and we'll go to group. They'll pick some people out of group, and then those people will actually go to wing and get another try at wing to be a wing person. So people like aerospace education officer, safety officer, CUL, communications unit leader officer. Those are awards.
And there's
so,
and there's literally
Squadron Commander of the Year award, which is not me.
So just to bring that up, I mean that's one of the big things
Is there
making sure.
a regulation that we can refer them to read about the awards?
So, and that's exactly what I was looking for, because the answer is yes. Well, I've got a nice email, and I'll send out that email. But there actually is a whole section on awards and what's authorized to be awarded. I'll make sure I email it out, but it is out there. It's on e-services. But again, it's one of the things that we do here to make sure that everybody's kind of awarded for their efforts. So, as part of a lot of the duties, I'm one of the people who gets to vote. So, if you most likely, if you submit somebody, I'll probably say. So, that's all for you online as well. So I'll make sure I send something out to the squadron so we can kind of start looking at it. Because I've also got a couple other squadrons that I have to help with this as well. That's like kind of the big today thing. As far as the subject for today, so your choices now, I was thinking there's choices. So one discussion is about CRM, crew resource management, right? I have stories that I can tell about it, but there's a really good mentor pilot video where you see how CRM goes really, really bad and it leads to a fatal crash. Or we can talk about ADSB, which everyone thinks we know about, but how much do we really know about ADSB? So, I don't know. It votes one way or another. What sounds more interesting than the other? ADSB sounds good. Okay.
Are you going to fill in with the drone pilot?
And you're putting me on the spot because I just got my remote pilot license, so I should. But I don't know if I'm qualified to talk about everything that in that subject line yet. But yeah, like I think it's that's a good point. Like, I think if you're flying in airspace, you need ADSB. If it's over, I think it's like, is it the class 2 or class 3? I'm trying to remember now. So they rate the drones by their size and capability of injuring humans if it fell out of the sky. That's an interesting. I didn't think that's how they'd rate the drones, but it's like the little small, several ounce ones, if they fell out and they just kind of hit you and bounce off, or you get a little scratch. Class 1. The ones that will cause laceration, that's class 2, I think, and then class 3 is like significant injury, bodily harm, and then I think the class 4s are like airplane.
Because I don't remember that.
Yeah, like class 4s are like airplanes. Like it's just like actual airplanes. So, well, first of all, I got to pull up my cheat sheet because I don't know everything there is to know about it. But like I said, there was a couple of different things that I had for today, and this is one of those ones where what I thought was very interesting. So first of all, let's talk about what it stands for. Oh, good Lord, what's up there?
You can erase any of that.
What is it? Oh, I see somebody's doing observer training. So.
Yeah. Terry loves to write stuff.
That looks like observer training. That's good stuff. I need to do that stuff too. Oh, man. So, ADSB, as we know, there's ADSB in and ADSB out. So, first let's start with, hopefully this is not a bad one. And I know some of you can cheat, but do we all know what ADSB stands for?
Air Defense Systems Broadcast?
No! Automatic.
Bigger type.
Well, I was trying to keep it just so that we keep it here, but it's automatic. Don't worry. You can't see it. That's right. I was like, you can't see it. That's why.
Perfect.
Yeah. So automatic.
Thank you.
Dependent. Which I'm like, I'm not really sure why we say dependent, but we'll get to that. I think it's this version of dependent. Surveillance. Ugh, I hate spelling this word. I'm going to stick with serve, right? Because we all know it means surveillance. Because I ain't spelling this and being like a weirdo. Broadcast. So, there's some important features to know about it. Primarily, the ADSB system has both in and out. As we know, or I think most of us know, ADSB out is required on aircraft in Class A, Class B, Class C, sometimes in D, and sometimes in E. Although in E it has some specific requirements. In fact, I'm wondering about D now. Look through my lists. We'll get into the big theory section there. So the main thing to remember is the system, unlike radar, where radar microwaves spinning around, bouncing off the aircraft, reporting a signal back to ATC, ADSB is reporting that signal out. Now, where does it report to? And I was looking for, I couldn't find it, and it was driving me absolutely insane, a really good description of what some people don't understand about ADSB. So if your aircraft has ADSB out, but not in, your aircraft will report its position in a puck. They call it a puck around the aircraft. So if I really don't want to try to do this, but it'll end up looking really bad, I'm sure. So if I have a puck of airspace and my airplane's in it, so it changes, but this puck it's an area up above the aircraft, below the aircraft, and of course out to the side. And that puck defines an area by which ADSB will communicate with other aircraft. So as long as there's another aircraft in that puck, both aircraft will share information, and then they will give each other positional data.
How big is that?
You're asking me questions I don't even know.
I don't know yet.
I don't know yet, because I had all this, but I can't find the article that I was using. So I'll look for it later. But there's specific things, and I want to say it's 3,500 feet in this direction or 5,000 feet in that direction, depending on where you are and some other variables. But basically, before I get into the technical details, there's a lot of misunderstandings about what it does. So in this mode, in this puck mode, if you're just out and no in, and there's another thing, there's a component of the ADSB system people don't pay attention to, but there are ground stations, right? So if your aircraft's flying around and there's no ground station, your aircraft will only communicate with aircraft in the puck, and that's the only data that you'll ever see. But if you have out only, no in, your aircraft will transmit its coordinates, and you of course don't know anything because you don't have in. If you have ADSB in, and there's another aircraft near enough to your puck, they'll send and receive what's called squitter data, the squitters that we use, but they're basically data packets that have your positional data, airspeed, direction, that type of thing, and the aircraft in the puck will all communicate with that data. And if you have traffic in, you'll see it as well. If there's a ground station, this is where it gets interesting. If your aircraft is talking to a ground station, you will see traffic that's further than your puck, as long as you also have ADSB in. So one of the most important things that I've noticed on the very few, because I'm still a very new pilot, when I'm in my cross-country flying, is if you are not in communication with a ground station, your ADS-B data will be somewhat inaccurate because you can't see a lot of things around you, right? You also can't see an aircraft that doesn't have ADS-B. So if you've got that, this ground station will link into the rest of the ATC traffic network, and you'll get a lot more information from the traffic network as a whole. So that's an important thing to remember, and I think ForeFlight actually shows that. When you are in ForeFlight, you will see the tower data displayed on your map. So, and it shows the difference between having a good link or a bad link. It's interesting, and I noticed it flying around, especially if you go out over the desert where there are no towers, or at least none that you can see. You don't get a complete set of traffic data. The other important thing to know about ADS-B is there's a couple other things. If you get in, if you have more than ADS-B in, you get FISB, which is the weather service Squidr packets, and TISB, which is the traffic information system packets. So if you get in, you get these services as well. And that alone makes it, worthwhile getting either ADS-B in and out installed via your aircraft instrumentation, or just carrying, a portable one. Like I carry a portable Sentry, but there's all kinds of units out there that you can get that will both give you in and out. You'll get weather. Weather is like, I want to say it's like up to 15 minutes delayed, so it's not the best to use if you're trying to dodge clouds or something. But at least you get a good image of where the weather is.
This is ForeFlight, by the way.
Right. So that data, well, do you have internet traffic? Yeah, you have internet traffic.
Yeah, the little triangle-looking things that look like.
Yeah. So what will happen when you're in flight? And I think I get the pointer. When you're in flight, if you're just using ForeFlight and you have a Sentry or some sort of ADS-B in and out unit, or in unit, more importantly, this up here will change from internet traffic to ADS-B traffic, which means you're now getting live traffic from your receiver. So that's another important thing. I've noticed that before, and I'm like, well, that's strange. And you look, and the receiver's off, or it's not functioning correctly. So important thing to look at if you do use ForeFlight. I'm sure this is repetitive for a lot of people. It is what it is. There's a couple of other things. The frequency that is used by ADS-B. There's two frequencies, and I believe one of them is 978 megahertz, and the other one is 1090 megahertz. And I think sometimes they like to put a little ES on there, and I haven't read up fully about why they put the ES there, but it has some extended features. But the important thing to remember is if you're going into Class A airspace, you have to have the 1090 transmitters, which is most of the newer ones. Those are the out, and whether you're able to receive and send on 1090. That's also, and I think that requirement is because the 1090 ES allows for satellites to read your ADS-B data. So they want that at the Class A altitudes. In the older radio frequencies, this is also called the Universal Access Transponder. They're working on this protocol for general aviation so that all these new products, let's call them, of technology that they're going to put out where aircraft talk to each other about their things that they're doing, they want that to go over this kind of commonized protocol where everything can talk to each other, correctly. Now, the airlines, of course, have much better tools for doing this. We have TCAS, and there's a bunch of other, TCAS. I think the main difference, and most of you probably know this more than I do, TCAS will give you a direction. There's a traffic, do this, right? Where ADS-B will not tell you what to do. It just says traffic. There's a missing part of the protocol, or something they're working on, called intent, where if you have a flight management system and a flight plan put into your flight management system, part of the Squidr packet that's sent by ADS-B out will include what my plane intends on doing. So interesting stuff there. Just kind of when I was reading around, found some neat stuff. Oh, look at
What's
that.
that?
Cap, that's our cap. Planes flying around.
Yep.
Um,
Right there. That's our Cap plane right there. Cap 443.
so the other thing that, of course, is important for us is, if I don't have to, I hope I don't have to look this up.
By the way, I don't know if you knew you could do that, but on ForeFlight, you just put Cap 443 there and it finds it for you.
Mm-hmm.
If it's flying.
If it's flying, yeah, if it's up and flying. And also, like, I think I got on track too, but so we know as of, what was it, January 2021, I believe, was the deadline that the FAA set that planes have to have ADS-B out if you're in Class A, Class B, Class C, and sometimes Class D, depending on your up to 18,000 feet, 10,000 to 18,000 feet, I believe. I should know. That's the rule. Can you fly without ADS-B? Yes, you can. In those airspaces, with a previous, there's a portal the FAA has to pre ask for a certified deviation from ATC ruling, right? Which is, I need to fly this airplane. It has a either non or non-existent ADS-B transmitter through space that I normally would need to. Usually 24 hours before, but up to an hour before, you can file for a pre-deviation. And as long as they have workload permitting, you can actually fly through that airspace. I saw on one of the things I was reading, there is a kind of communication you need to have with ATC if you choose to fly in that manner. I don't see this being a problem for most of us, unless some of us are owning like really old aircraft that don't have ADS-B, but they've made ADS-B pretty available to nearly everybody at this point. So it's not like it's a super expensive part to put on your plane. So at least having it out, you may not have it in. Let's see. But aside from that, it's like it's a funny topic because I'm like, well, there's not a lot to talk about with ADS-B because I was like, well, it works. Yeah, I mean, it's, we take it for granted. One thing that's interesting, what I first, I think it was even before I started taking flight lessons, I put a software-defined radio, you comm geeks what I'm talking about, software-defined radio on my, Raspberry Pi system, put an antenna out there, start listening to everything out there. The most common thing I saw was actually ADS-B squitter packets. And it's because I live right where planes start their descent into SNA. So, and then of course I could see like Matthews and everything else from my house. So I was receiving all this ADS-B data, and it's just standard data packets that you can just sniff out of the air. They're unencrypted, and it tells you exactly what those packets contain, which is positional data, altitude, speed, and course. That's pretty much what the packet says.
An ID, right?
It gives your aircraft ID if you're set properly. I would say set properly, but yeah, I always wondered how they program that. Now that I think about it, because is it when they install it on your aircraft, does it have the ID code in it? Like that's an interesting thing right there. But just kind of a refresher on that. I mean, it's interesting stuff. I know in my training environment, it's, I was trained here and I flew over Lake Matthews, and that's pretty much what the instructor is doing most of the time, is literally looking at their iPad with, the traffic data. I mean, yes, we're our eyeballs out of the aircraft, but it gives you that extra second of kind of awareness of, well, I know there's 5 planes in this area, and let's keep a lookout. When I started doing my long distance solos, same thing. I mean, I'm a nervous student pilot, and in fact, on the 150 nautical mile cross country, a helicopter almost merged into me from below. I was on my descent back here into Riverside, and I'm just cruising along. I'm thinking, man, I'm pilot material at this point, and I get the traffic alert where it's like, traffic, traffic, 1 o'clock, and it's red and climbing, and I'm like, ah, and sure enough, I saw it, and it was dusk. It was getting to be dusk about this time, so visibility is a little less than it normally would be, and I'm like, and I, just turned off a little bit to the side, and the helicopter just climbed up like right through my flight, my course, my original course. So that would have just been chopped up in some rotor blades, and he would have fallen out of the sky, and it would have been an awesome first long distance solo. But so that proved to me right away. I kind of want to get a backup Sentry unit or something, but I have a Sentry unit and I use it. And even if I'm not using the moving map and all the other features of ForeFlight, I always have ForeFlight open, connected to my device, so at least it's giving me traffic warnings in my headset. So, yes, yes.
Is the ELT the same thing as the ADSB? Is it the same information?
I do not believe it is. I'm gonna, because I just did a bunch of reading and it's all swirling around in my head. In fact, let me see if I can find it here. Because I think the answer is no, but let me look it up and ask that question myself. Because is it the same packet? Is that the question?
Yeah, the same data, location, speed.
Well, your ELT is not going to have any of the uh, course and speed and altitude because it's after those things have all stopped. Uh, so, and I think if I'm not mistaken, the 406, since it is a shorter range signal, has more data in it, right? So it's got your GPS coordinates if it got a good GPS fix at the time it was activated, and it kind of gives that ping, whereas the 1215 is just literally a ping, like it's a bearing, right? Just okay, sonar there, it's over there, as opposed to that full information packet you're going to get from the 406 ELT. And I think a lot of the newer ELTs have both. So they'll send the 102, 121.5 ping, and then it'll send the 406 ping and alternate so that at least both data sets are there. And I think there's a night where, Colonel Swift was talking about that. A lot of people don't realize that you're most likely going to be able to see the 121.5 first because it's a much wider signal and you can see it and hear it on our Becker units pretty far away. As you get closer relatively, you can start kind of drilling in on the 406, which is giving you a much better fix. But I think satellites can also see the 406, so they're going to know the position. If you're able to transmit 406 out, the satellites typically will pick it up. Look like you have a question.
Yeah. How do you know your transponder relates to the receiver?
Like the transponder that I don't know the answer to that. I don't think I don't think they're the same. I mean, let me see.
The transponders getting paid that?
No, in fact, I was reading something about that because I haven't. I was reading the section about surveillance radars and are they going to continue to use surveillance radars versus ADSB, and I didn't get all the way through that section yet. But the data that they get from the surveillance radar does need to have transponder codes with it because that's how the system was built. ADSB is supposed to be an auxiliary system that lets planes talk to each other in addition to talking to ground stations and into the traffic system. I don't see them phasing it out. I mean, just if I think about it logically, why would you? But because there are times where ADSB is not as effective, but in general, it's almost always better than just a transponder. Because transponder, you need to be seen by radar. ADSB, no one actually needs to see you, except for people near you. That's the only thing that needs to see you. But there's some pretty interesting things. Like there's so remember I talked about this whole puck deal. Okay, so my airplane only has ADSB out. I'm not in communication with a ground station, right? So I'm not seeing any of this stuff. But if there's another plane in the puck that's receiving my data and can see another ground station, then my aircraft's position then gets repeated throughout the system. So they did design it to be pretty robust in that manner. But it is a participation system. So if you are not participating by sending your information out, you won't receive the information in as well. They did that, so if I'm flying over and I only have ADSB in, like I've got a little portable receiver, but my aircraft doesn't have ADSB out, If I'm not, and since I can't talk to a ground station, what that means is I will not get the ADSB in data if I'm the only aircraft in the area, especially. And if I am not the only aircraft in the area, the only information I'm going to get is about things that aren't my aircraft, which it's an interesting system. And I was like, why'd they do that? And the whole deal was they wanted to save bandwidth, is what it turned out. They didn't want the ground towers to just sit there and beam stuff out continuously. They wanted it to be if there's a participating aircraft, I'll activate, start listening, rebroadcast. If I don't see any participating aircraft, it shuts itself down into standby mode. So I thought that was an interesting little tidbit as well. I think also, if I'm not mistaken, for people that are really interested in knowing a lot more than I know about this subject, the FAA's rules on this are going to be, I believe, here. I believe those two are the FAA's descriptors on what they want. Good, I got 978 right. We're not an airline, so I'm not going to talk about the TSO standards. Yeah, I think we covered a lot of it here. You have another question? I hope I have another answer for you.
How is ADSB depicted on the controller's scope?
Ooh, I do. Let me find out. Oh, but you know what? I can answer another question about that. Your initial question. They don't say when, but it does say the FAA, and this is on the FAA site. They will be transitioning away from radar to ADSB. And they give a number of reasons why. They start with the fact that it's environmentally friendly. Well, I mean, so radars, one thing I saw in the military is whenever you are near naval ships doing exercises, they're irradiating, the space around them with a lot of microwave electricity, microwave energy. And then they form these data links with other aircraft. You can see birds accidentally fly into data link and they'll fall out of the sky dead. Just basically cooks them, like right on the spot. Any birds that want to hang around near aircraft carriers and stuff fall out of the sky. It's really weird. Like I was like, and they're like, well, yeah, we're radiating the air around it, so yeah. So I guess there you go. It's environmentally a little bit friendly.
What is the other thing besides birds you call out?
Hopefully it's only birds. Let's see. This is interesting, and I have noticed this too. So this is what the FAA says why they're transitioning away. So environmentally friendly, yeah. Pilots can see what controllers see. To answer that kind of question, it displays showing other aircraft in the sky. Right? It reduces the risk of runway incursions because both in the cockpit and the controllers can see the airplane on the ground. And I've noticed in ForeFlight when it's reading ground targets, they're brown, like instead of a normal like blue that you see when they're in the air. So because when I train in and out of here, you'll see the targets on the ground or they're all brown, and it's like people on the ramp or sitting in the run-up area. So they said it shows the location of the aircraft equipped and equipped ground vehicles. So a lot of airports will put ADSB receivers on the ground vehicles at the airport so they can actually track them as well. Very interesting. So during night, heavy rainfall, snowfall, they can see where things actually are without the full visibility. ADSB provides greater coverage since ground stations are so much easier to place than radar. It's true. Remote areas without radar coverage now have surveillance with ADSB. Relying on satellites instead of ground navigational aids also means aircraft are able to fly more directly from point A to point B, I guess. And then improved accuracy and integrity. Oh, you know what? I think that's for you instrument types. I think that's more of an instrument discussion, right? So a lot of the airways were designed to fly VOR to VOR to VOR and then the radar systems or radar surveillance systems were designed to cover those areas at great expense. Whereas ADSB I don't care where you are, I can see you, as long as you can touch a ground station. So that makes sense. Okay. So again, the improved accuracy, integrity, reliability of satellite signals over radar means controllers will be able to safely reduce minimum separation distance between aircraft and increase capacity in the nation's skies. Yeah, we'll see if that happens. I was actually airborne the last time SNA went ATC 0. And thankfully I wasn't near SNA, but I heard it was quite exciting. So everyone's giving me a blank look. ATC 0? We don't know. When the traffic system's overloaded, SNA will go to uncontrolled, which is like, it's a major airport, and people are shooting, and that 737 shooting an uncontrolled approach. I was like, because I was doing a short solo down to, I think, Oceanside or something, and I could hear what was going on with SoCal, and I was like, all right, I'm glad I'm not over there. Uncontrolled airport, dude. Broadcast your position, hopefully the 737 that's sitting down there waiting to get on the runway doesn't go on the runway. Let's see, you asked another question. Did we answer both, or did, I don't think we did. Implement other alternatives such as LORAN enhancement. I didn't even know that LORAN was still in use. Ground station mode C receivers in mode S. I think that was part of that question. Yeah. So, if I read through this really quick. The agency looks at the possibility of doing nothing and retaining all existing radar until 2035. Wow. That's their statement on, should you retain those things. I think there's another interesting thing in here that I just saw. Where did it go? Oh yeah, the range. Where was that? Oh, of course. We're not going to get any good detail out of this. It doesn't tell you. It just says the range depends on your aircraft's attitude. So thank you. Thank you very much for a technical explanation. What other questions about this? I mean, it's an interesting topic. I mean, I found it interesting because there was a whole discussion that in every document, and I still can't find the document, by the way, that all the documentation that I saw didn't describe the puck, but it didn't describe this relationship between your aircraft, ground stations, and other aircraft, and how they talk to each other. Because it is not simple, and it's not intuitive. Like, the way that aircraft communicate with each other is pretty straightforward, but once you add a ground station, then it gets a little bit complicated in the way information gets shared around. So everyone's asleep. I like it. I put everyone to sleep.
You got me thinking about it. Like, I looked up to see what is the range, and I don't know if this is inaccurate, but it says maximum range in the system is line of sight means typically 200 nautical miles.
That's the number they put right underneath it, and I didn't believe it. Because it said before ADS-B surveillance was not available because they're talking about Gulf of Mexico. At low altitudes or beyond 200 nautical miles from the coast. But now with ADS-B in place, air traffic control can provide 5 nautical mile separation of low-flying aircraft transversing the Gulf. So they threw that number in there, I guess, because that is the range of it. So they probably have ground stations all around the Gulf of Mexico. And, yeah, so I don't think, and I saw this somewhere, let me see if it's in this article. This is a frequently asked questions at FAA.gov about ADS-B. Let me see if they mentioned satellites. Because I only saw a couple times where they talked about it. The part that I read before said it wasn't fully implemented yet, and that's what I was worried about. But, yeah, I don't see them talking about it here. I'm just going to find it real quick, though.
What's the relationship between ADS-B and GPS?
Between the two?
Yeah, like, are they depending on one another?
Well, that's an interesting question. Find out. Because I think the question that I would have to find out is I know that all of, well, like for instance, I have a Sentry, I have a 4-flight Sentry. It has its own GPS, but it's only receiving in signals. So where does the out get your position data from? Yeah, and does it have an integrated GPS or does it have to use somebody else's GPS? The answer is ADSB relies on an aircraft's GPS receiver. So if you have no GPS, you've got no ADSB out, I guess. That's that is again, like, well, but again, GPS receivers, I guess they're not super expensive now. Talking about the expenses of an aircraft, I guess it's not super expensive in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, it says relies on GPS receiver to determine highly accurate position and ground speed. There you go. All right, I like that. What else? What other facts about ADSB are out there?
I don't know anything here saying that it's excellent above 5,000 feet ATL.
That makes sense. It's interesting. I'm trying to figure out how it interacts with the FAA. How did they get the signal? Yeah, I think the FAA just receives it through ground stations, I believe. Yeah, they just receive it through ground stations. But that doesn't make sense. But I think back to the other description I was talking about, how the system is designed that if you have an aircraft that can't see a ground station, but you have an aircraft that can see a ground station but can also see the aircraft, that aircraft will retransmit that every other aircraft it can see gets retransmitted into the system. So there's some redundancy built into what can and can't be seen. How many? Well, let's see. How many of you have used ADS-B in, like with your 4-flights and stuff like that? Yeah, you've used it. I mean, it's super simple. I think my only problem that I've ever had with mine is the Wi-Fi disconnects occasionally, like that, like, and it sucks because it'll be flying and then it just disconnects, and I'm like, well, I can't restart it from where I am. So, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, now the other thing, I think there is so these two protocols, I think, if you have ADS-B in and you get these two signals, that's what leads to the traffic display and the weather displays, which again are, I think if you're on like a long cross country, it's just very vital stuff. So.
Have you flown without it?
Yes.
Makes you.
You feel naked. Yeah. I mean, and I've had situations without it where in fact, well, let's see. On the SARX we did. Are we getting traffic data in the Garmin? You know what? I can't remember if we're getting traffic data in the Garmin, but I was mission scanner, and having a person dedicated to looking for traffic is very interesting because that's the first time that I can actually see pretty much all the traffic all the time. As a pilot, when I'm flying, I always think that I'm missing something. So I've had plenty of times where I do my scan and do my instrument scan, and then I look up and and then I'll get this weird feeling, and then you see a dot, and then that dot just zooms by, and I'm like, but it was right in front of me. How did I miss it? Like, and I've got good sunglasses, and I can it cuts glare and all that kind of stuff, and I don't know. But I think I unfortunately or fortunately, being trained here at Riverside, it's very busy, so you get, I hate to use the word comfort, but you get used to aircraft around you. and the part that I really hate about it is you get used to aircraft around you, which is not good. But then when it's like you're number 3 for runway 27 and I don't see one of those aircraft, and it's like, that makes me super nervous because I'm like, well, that aircraft's not on a collision course, but I can't see it and it's close. And it's like that just tells you that, I mean, but then of course nowadays I look at my iPad and I go, well, I know where they are, and I'll be like, no, I don't see them. And then they make a turn. Oh, okay, now I see them. And I mean, I think this one time I was coming in, and they were like, your traffic is at 12 o'clock and it's slow, so if you can give me a couple S turns. I was like, all right. And he's like, do you have your traffic in sight? I'm like, no. It's a bright yellow biplane, and I can't see it. And I was like, and I'm looking all over the place, and it wasn't until I got probably within half a mile of it that I could actually see it. And I think the first time I flew in low vis, that also taught me to be very scared of low vis. Again, it was one of my cross country flights, and it was hazy that day. Visibility was right around 4 miles, so a little bit sketchy when I was coming back. And I was starting to actually think about, do I have to divert? Because I was like, I didn't want to text with my CFI right now, but I was just like, and as I descended through, like I was descending over Matthews, so Matthews is busy, as it always is, and it's 3-4 miles visibility in the haze, and there's 3 aircrafts, like, so Riverside Towers, like, there's 3 aircraft at the lake, and I'm like, okay, I see 1, because I see that light, I can see that light, and I see 2, where's 3? Where's 3? Now I'm getting nervous, and I'm still in my descent, because I'm coming down at 2,000 feet, and then I get, and I was just like, I mean, and I could see it on ForeFlight. I just could not visually confirm where that aircraft was, and it was making me really nervous because it's Lake Matthews. So now and then, and when I was getting checked out in one of the other aircraft over there, so now I'm going to use the Lake Paris area. So you call up March and you just ask them, hey man, can I do some maneuvers over Lake Paris? And they go, sure, it's your thing, and then you have no traffic. Like, and I think I'm going to do that from now on, because Lake Matthews is nerve-wracking. I mean, it's that's where I was trained. I know the area really well, but it's nerve-wracking because and we're all doing crazy maneuvers and emergency descents, and
It's like the practice area up the Palos Verdes.
Is there a practice area of Palos Verdes?
It's like Matthews and Sterling.
Well, that in Long Beach is so for my simulated instrument training, we did Long Beach approaches, and I was like, this is crazy. And my instructor's like, get used to it. We're going to do a lot of this when we're your instrument rating. And I'm like, yeah. I mean, have I landed at French Valley? No, I haven't landed there yet.
They don't like training out of there, and it's non-controlled, and it's a nightmare. There's like 4 or 5 different schools there.
Oh.
They're all student pilots and no tower, and everybody's
Just yapping
doing their
away.
own pattern work, going all the way to San Diego to turn down there, and it's a nightmare.
Wow, really?
So if you want some
I've done F-70 in the simulator, but I've never done it for real. I've flown by it many times and go, that's nice, and then kept on.
Just look at the traffic. Look when it's the busiest, and then
Yeah, because that's the thing. So I've got this overlay. Let me see if I can show it. I've got this overlay on my ForeFlight. 'Cause I don't know if a lot of people know that you can do your own overlays. I didn't do my own overlay, but it's actually going to give me a tip. Okay. All right, so you guys can see that. So if you start looking at 70, let me see, did I turn it off by accident? There we go. So as you start to go in, you'll see this purple haze around M70. That is an overlay that I found called hot zones. And it fits in today's conversation because hot zones is based off some dude with a lot of time in his hand collects ADS-B data and then maps hotspots and then projects that as KML files, which that's all these are. So I gotta look. Well, the best. There's a link, and I'll show you how to do it. And then that link also shows you how to build your own maps. But it's really cool because when you're flying into unknown areas, because you'll also see like Matthews has it, right? Yeah, yeah, and it's this overlay that I found on. There's a website about specifically using iPads and whatnot for ESBs, and it just happened to be an example of how to do an overlay. And it just, based on ADSB collected data, this is where a high concentration of ADSB information has been collected. So it knows to mark that as a hot zone. So then, of course, when you'll see, the Chino and Corona areas, but it intentionally stays out of the airspaces because those are supposed to either be busy, or you need to see, so they don't typically have those in airspace areas. But that is the cool part. So like you'll see, if you're making a flight plan, so this is what I ended up using it for. If I'm making a flight plan, I try my best to stay away from those zones because I know for a fact they're either training areas or places I don't really want to be because I've been, the corridor from, flying Riverside down to Ramona and back and things like that. It's a busy corridor and you're constantly, there's traffic left and right. And, it's just, yeah, let's see. Let me see if I can find the website that I have probably wouldn't be on this. There's I'll look up the website after this, but it's but that's all it does. And what it shows up in is when you have this, your display up, right at the bottom is where all custom overlays go. So once you click on it, it's just literally a link that downloads the KML. The KML is recognized usually by ForeFlight, and it pulls it in and says, okay, I've got a new thing to display. Because like I said, you can build your own. Like you can build your own KML with cool icons and stuff like that for your own, flight plans or your own training area. Like if you're a flight school and you say, hey, use ForeFlight, download this, and shows where the school's, practice areas are. I had no idea that there was that. It's actually fairly simple. It's just KML is the key markup language, I think is what it's called, or it's what GPS, like Google Maps. It's like what they use to display data. So it's like comma separated values. Like it's very simple stuff. So anyway, and I think you can build. Because I don't know if people know this part of Google Maps. You can go into Google Maps and then edit and make your own little markups to maps, save that as a KML, and then import it into ForeFlight. So like most of us will never use those features, but but the hot zone stuff I found interesting because it's like if you just look in this area, cable and you'll start going over it and it's like, oh yeah, these are all heavily used areas. And it's LA, and it's crazy. Long Beach. This is why I keep talking about I want to stay out of Long Beach.
That one right there to the left of the big Long Beach.
Yeah. That's this area, this little thing right there.
And it's also an aerobatic area.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So yeah, that was neat. And like again, that was built off of somebody just collecting ADSB data and drawing basically taking all those GPS coordinates and how often they were hit, the frequency of the hits, making a KML problem. But I gotta tell you, I tried and I think I was successful. Is I did my best to not use any of this technology during my training. I tried to mark one eyeball and section. Well, I tried my best not to unfold sectionals while I was flying, but I had my sectional folded to this, I think my sectional was folded to like this area or something like that. So if I ever had to pull it out, where are you? I could do that pretty quickly. Of course, start memorizing the VORs and I could, figure stuff out. And it wasn't, I tried my darndest to make sure that until after I got my certified, my certificate, that I started actually using this as my primary flight tool. But, I'll look it up in a second. But we're right at time. Any further questions? Any comments from the peanut gallery back there? I'm referring to the online people, not you, Dave. Nothing? We're good? All right. Well, meeting adjourned. I hope it wasn't too boring. I was asked at the last moment to come up with this, so I didn't have time to prepare fully, or I would have had slides. But
well, Tim Peterson says, good stuff. Chris, thank you. Great info. Thank you. Comes from Scott. So, yep.
Well, glad you enjoyed it. Like I said, if I had a little more time to prepare, I could make it a little bit better. I do a lot of presentations for a living, so it doesn't look like it today, but that's what I do. But yeah, thank you. And actually, cussing.